to the Dan Corder Show. Thank you so much for being here. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. And this is a very special night because we are delighted to announce that...
But now you have been promoted.
Yes, after 4 months at the NCA, welcome to our first ever 1 hour show. The Watch Party is now Mondays 9 to 10 p.m. exclusive to ENCA, and tonight we have a lot to talk about. We need to talk about SAPS. We need to talk about Mihlali and Leroy. We pay tribute to a South African icon who recently passed away. Show correspondent Mashed Up Potatoes is here, and so are star interviews, journalist Ferial Hafaji and culture critics Fizukutla Mtonti and Ayanda Charlie. Let's get into it. And we start News Worth Knowing with last week's presidential Imbizo, which is an event series where members of South Africa's cabinet are meeting with communities, fielding questions and concerns from the public and providing answers. And this first Imbizo in Ekurhuleni had people talking, but not about anything that was said at the Imbizo. Rather, thirsty South Africans were lusting after a hot new government official, guys. A mysterious man who nobody had seen before, but everyone wanted to know more about. Who is this hot new bombshell that has entered the villa? Oh, it's amazing what sunglasses can do. Wow, I'll have a cup of that cake.
Cupcake. Hello.
Cyril in sunglasses can spread my Rama anytime. All right. Yeah, I know, I worked on that. The president has an eye infection, which is why he is wearing sunglasses, and he apologized for wearing shades indoors, to which South Africans said, "No worries, Mr. President, very demure, very mindful, very considerate." This is a big change for President Ramaphosa. He's always been a style leader in eyewear, but he seems to have left his brat summer 2020 COVID era with the mask behind for a more classic tribute to some of the greats who came before him, and there have been some greats in his position. Right. Next on News Worth Knowing, residents of St. Francis Bay and Gqeberha were shocked yesterday morning by streaks of light in the sky and loud bangs that might have been space debris, meteorites or man-made. And I have to say, Elon, bro, drop your rubbish somewhere else, please. Bin days are Tuesdays and Thursdays, and with your massive wealth, you have done literally nothing for this country. Drop your rubbish, your litter somewhere else. According to local boat captain Rocky Pretorius, he was out on a whale watching tour yesterday when he saw a flash of orange-red light in the sky. And to quote him, "It was super close to me. I could see everything. It was super, super loud. After it fell in the water, it was 3 big bang noises. It was bang, bang, bang." He's clearly an Ariana Grande, Nicki Minaj fan. I'm so impressed that some of you got that. This all happened on Sunday around 9 a.m. So whatever the pastors were preaching in church yesterday had that little extra oomph. They were like, that is the word of the Lord. You better pray, as the windows rattle and there's literally light passing through the sky. Next up on News Worth Knowing, the ongoing social media war between South Africans and Nigerians reached a new phase last week as people in both countries went on the ride-hailing app Bolt and requested rides from drivers in the other country and then cancelled on them once the driver had arrived at the fake pickup spot. Bolt has now stopped requests between South Africa and Nigeria because, I get it, it's a prank. But guys, trolling people's work is heavy. You're blocking people's business. You're making them waste time and money on petrol. You're preventing them from getting actual customers. In the immortal words of Tyler,
oh my, what the heck?
Literally, what the heck? Next on News Worth Knowing, a South African legend has passed away. William Smith was the lovely man on the Learning Channel on SABC2 who taught maths and science to hundreds of millions of people in the 90s and 2000s. Now, you may be thinking, Dan, there just weren't hundreds of millions of people in South Africa. But yes, hundreds of millions of people, sometimes hundreds of millions a day, watched William Smith. Because many South Africans don't know this, but William Smith's shows were often broadcast across as many as 27 African countries at once to a vast audience of people. And so many people owe their education and jobs that followed to William Smith. In the 90s in South Africa, many kids didn't have access to good schools or schools at all, and many teachers were not given the training to teach effectively. But William Smith, he was there with his whiteboard, his pen, sometimes a few Smarties, and cutting-edge techniques to explain complex concepts in algebra, physics, and chemistry. His free classes on TV literally got millions of people through school. And that's not all, by the way. In the 70s, Smith opened multiracial schools to provide teaching to all young people, no matter what their race, which was literally against the apartheid law. But he did it anyway. He broke the law and dared the government to stop him. Forget American Will Smith. He's just an actor with a slapping problem. Our Will Smith is the original bad boy for life. He was breaking those laws. He was also a nature conservationist. He was a judge on Miss South Africa. Yeah, kids, believe it or not, there was a time in human history when a maths teacher was big enough to judge Miss South Africa. Could never happen now. For all of his work, William Smith was awarded the Order of the Baobab, which is one of the biggest honors that the South African government can bestow on people for extraordinary service to the country, and we honor him tonight. Thank you so much, William Smith. Truly our Fresh Prince of childcare. Right, yes, exactly, right, absolutely. Next on News Worth Knowing, guys. A top South African diplomat has been recalled from the United Arab Emirates after being accused of organizing robberies of his own Dubai offices as part of a scheme to create illegitimate visas, work permits, and travel papers to UAE citizens going to South Africa. Andrew Tsepo Lebona is South Africa's Consul General in Dubai, and according to an investigation from DIRCO and the Department of Home Affairs, he organized for someone to break into the Consul General's offices through the ceiling twice to steal visa and passport-related documents. This guy is South Africa's Dr. Doofenshmirtz. And frankly, it seems right now that Home Affairs is Perry the Platypus, which is not something I expected. But hold on, there's more. There's more to Doofenshmirtz. Lebona and his staff have also been providing people handwritten visas and pocketed the fees for themselves, when visas are supposed to be processed through the department at more than 2,600 Rand per application to be paid to the department. And Lebona also illegally gave his own son a UAE diplomatic visa, which he does not qualify for, and then let his son sit in on meetings that he did not have security clearance for. And his son seems to have been using his illegal diplomatic visa to pursue business opportunities in Dubai for himself and his father. So now Evel Knievel and his son are off that Metro FM interview and back in South Africa under investigation. Next on the News Worth Knowing, brace yourselves, because I'm about to say a sentence that I don't believe I have ever said before. I actually can't believe I'm saying it. You've probably never ever heard anyone say this. Might be a first. Are you guys ready? Are you ready for a sentence you've never heard? Okay, here it goes. The South African Police Service did something amazing. I know, right? But they really did. Listen to this. SAPS thwarted an attempted kidnapping and ransom the other day, which is cool. It's not amazing. I'm not going to congratulate SAPS for doing their job. It's the bare minimum. Until you hear how they did it, guys, because SAPS organized a fake kidnapping plan with a kidnapping target to expose the people who were actually planning to kidnap the target. Isn't that so cool? Okay, Sherlock Saps, we see you. That's like a Hollywood blockbuster storyline. Listen to this. Basically, crime intelligence found out that a woman was arranging with a criminal syndicate to kidnap her boss and then force her employer to withdraw tons of money from her business bank account. SAPS then organized a successful fake kidnapping of the target and played along, and then arrested 5 suspects when they were planning to withdraw the money that had been fake transferred by SAPS following the fake kidnapping. That is wild. And the 5 were arrested on charges of conspiracy and kidnap and extortion. It's just so badass. And just quickly, so you know how Ocean's 11 this is, the 5 suspects were arrested at Melrose Arch, which is, for those not living in Johannesburg, it's a village for the wealthy to be wealthy. They arrested supercars like Land Rovers and Range Rovers from these 5 suspects. I'm so impressed. This level of smarts from the South African Police Service. To quote South African icon Tyler just one more time.
Oh what the heck? What? Oh my gosh, guys, this is crazy.
It is crazy. We're going to take a quick break. Coming up in a second, we bring you the latest installment of the South African Pothole Awards, and show correspondent Mashed Not Potatoes has a very important public service announcement because many South Africans are eating something that can be really dangerous for them. This is the first ever full-on 1-hour show for the Dan Quarter Show. See you after the break. Back to the Dan Quarter Show. South Africa is a movie and you're on the watch party. Still to come, show correspondent Mashed Not Potatoes is here to tell us about a food phenomenon sweeping South Africa that sounds odd and is often dangerous. And esteemed journalist Ferrell Haffajee joins us later to talk about the new, latest, ongoing Johannesburg mayor drama. Before then though, I'm going to try and achieve something impossible because I'm going to try and make stats sexy. I know, right? I can see your hearts are racing. They're going pitter-patter, pitter-patter. Look, I know for most of us, stats are incredibly boring, but everyone in the country needs to know about the absolute fuff-up involving Stats SA. Because Stats SA is really, really important. They're the organization whose job it is to find out what is really going on in South Africa. They use censuses, surveys, and other research to literally find out what South Africa is, what life is like for South Africans, and what is going well and what is going badly in the country. Stats SA's information is used to determine government budgets and influence which policies are introduced and which are canned. Stats SA's data can be the difference between a community getting more money to fix its sewage system or not, and the difference between a new policy to help hearing impaired people existing or not. And this information is used by the private sector too. In Stats SA's own words, this information could, for example, be applied to the agriculture industry for business planning purposes if you know the number and spread of your consumers, and you will know how to plan for the distribution of your product. Sexy. Okay. But what I need you to understand is, if Stats SA screws up, the consequences can be really, really bad for all South Africans. And Stats SA, they just screwed up. Like Katy Perry's latest album screwed up. Big time. Hey, don't tell me you liked Women's World. Okay. Every 10 years or so, Stats SA conducts an enormous piece of research called a census, which is, according to Stats SA's own website, supposed to determine the number of people living in South Africa, who we are in terms of age, sex, education, occupation, economic activity, and other important characteristics. Information about where we live in terms of housing, access to water, and the availability of essential facilities. We don't know what and who we are as a country without the census. Stats SA conducted their latest census a few years ago. Census 2022 was the first one since 2011. And since then, South Africa has changed a ton. It was vital that we got updated data on the state of the nation. You guys with me? You with me? Yeah. The reason the census is such a big deal is that it's the only time Stats SA tries to count and interview people in the country. It's really expensive and difficult, which is why it only happens every 10 years or so. And everywhere in the world, it's impossible to interview everyone, right? You can't interview 66 million people. So there's always what we call an undercount, which is the number of people that they didn't manage to reach. The better the census, the smaller the undercount. And if the undercount is small, you can make statistical adjustments for it and therefore extrapolate to figure out what's going on with the whole country. And it turns out Stats SA thinks that this census had a 30% undercount, guys. They interviewed 30% too few people, which is actually a global record undercount. It's a record failure, which makes this South Africa's second major record bad thing, along with mass unemployment, where we are literally top of the unwanted charts. It's about double the undercount from the last census in 2011. It's way, way, way too big an undercount to provide accurate information. Now, Stats SA blamed COVID and people not answering their doorbells for safety reasons or not allowing interviews because they thought that they were being scammed. But all of that was predicted to happen, and Stats SA still failed to find solutions to overcome those obstacles. Stats SA blames South Africa's Treasury because Treasury apparently wouldn't roll over the allocated budget for the census to a year later when COVID would have been less of a problem, which forced Stats SA to go ahead when they didn't want to. So they ended up with a 30% undercount and real discrepancies in their findings. One demographer found that Stats SA overestimated South Africa's population by more than 1 million people too many. They overcounted the white population, which is a problem they've had before, and the Indian population and the populations of some small towns. If all of this is true, then the whole census is likely to be contaminated, like an ANC official in a government department. But Stats SA insisted and still insists that the census is usable, and they've refused to engage with independent researchers' criticisms. And then last week, they finally confessed. They published a list of exclusions, which are research areas from the census where Stats SA now admits that the data is too unreliable to use, so they won't release it publicly. And these research areas are big ones, guys. Mortality and fertility, income and earnings, labor and unemployment, meaning we don't have up-to-date census information on deaths, births, pregnancies, how much people are earning, how many people have jobs, what the jobs are like. It's an absolutely massive fuff to clear up. It suggests that the independent researchers were right to say that the census was broken, and it has real-world consequences. It's extremely unlikely that another census will be sanctioned soon, but government budgets still need to be allocated, policies still need to be developed and cancelled, and business still needs to act on this information. And as long as Stats SA insists that the census is fine, government departments might be legally forced to use statistics that we all know are wrong. So now we wait to see if someone in government can come up with a solution to clean up this mess, because we really, really need one. That was not sexy, but thank you for sitting through it with me. Right, let's change gears a little bit. We are now very excited to present the latest episode in our own reality TV competition, because we now have a new winner to crown on the South African Pothole Award! Yes, the Snappers! No, thanks. Okay, welcome to the Sappers, where we celebrate our country's greatest potholes and the local government officials who have been vital to these potholes' success by doing absolutely nothing to fix them. We're honoring the biggest potholes, the oldest potholes, the deepest potholes, the ones that cause the most traffic and the ones that take out the most tires. Last week, the crown went to Everton West Mfuleni, where Mayor Sipho Radebe has overseen the growth of this magnificent pothole that actually becomes a community swimming pool in the rainy season. Phenomenal work from Mayor Radebe there, making this multi-purpose facility possible. But this week we're off to Ga-Rankuwa in Gauteng. Thank you so much to S, who will keep anonymous, for nominating the pothole on Motsuminyana Street near Tsuene High School. Well, I say a pothole, S says that the whole street is now a pothole. Dan caught a space satellite show cam. Can we please take a look from space? But I don't even see a street there. I don't see a street for a pothole to be on. Dan caught a show drone cam. Let's see what we can see there, please.
Oh, is that the street?
That pothole has eaten the street, guys. Man, that is a Super Saiyan pothole. Judges, audience, how are we feeling? Does this deserve a sapper? All right, you heard them. Congratulations to the Motsuminyana Street pothole in Ga-Rankuwa and all of the local leaders who have made this pothole possible over the years, including former mayors, the ANC's Gwen Ramakgopa, Josienso Ramakgopa, the DA Solim Simanga, Stevens Makolapa, and Randall Williams, and Congress of the People's Moruna Makwarela. This is truly a GNU effort from all sides to put this pothole together, and you will be delighted to learn that you have won a South African Pothole Award. Yes, the crown is going We'll give current Mayor Celias Brink a year. He's only been there for a year, so we'll give him a little break. And that because he has recently started a road rejuvenation project in Ga-Rankuwa. But to all of those who came before him that left Ga-Rankuwa's roads in this state, congratulations on your sapper. Where will the crown be going next week? That's up to you. If you've got a pothole that you think deserves a sapper, you need to nominate it, like S did. Send your sapper nomination to potawards@gmail.com. Yes, potawards@gmail.com. And remember to really sell your pothole's best qualities. Let us know what makes it so great. And we'll be back next week to crown the next winner on the South African Pothole Awards, exclusive to the Dan Corder Show on ENCA. Now, it's time to welcome back Dan Corder Show correspondent Mashed Up Potatoes is here. Hey, Mash. What do you got planned for us today? What's news in the news?
Thank you very much, Dan. South African women are currently in the midst of a silent pandemic. No, I'm not talking about the word demure.
Hey.
It was side-eye, Dan. It was cutesy, it was mindful, now it's just annoying. Stop.
No, I like
Side-eye. This pandemic, however, is perhaps the most surprising, rather. Yeah. What you just saw is a young woman having a light snack of umkhako. Umkhako is also known as umhlabati, clay, or African cutberry. Medically, umkhako is also known as geophagia. Geophagia is the intentional ingestion of soil, sand, or clay. It traces all the way back to the Roman physicians, who also ate rocks, sand, or clay for all types of reasons, such as medicinal, religious, or as Julius Caesar would say, just in jail. But in South Africa, women have been seen eating umkhako at an alarming rate, and that can potentially risk their lives. So tonight, we'll be taking a look at umkhako, why do people eat it, and what are its dangers. So, to start with, umkhako is made up of brown or red brick soil. Amongst umkhako enthusiasts, there is a heated discussion as to which clay tastes better, the red umkhako or the brown umkhako. Kind of like how there's vigorous academic discussion about which Coke tastes better, Coke from the red bottle or Coke from the black bottle. And I'll tell you now, the black bottle just tastes somehow, right? Anyway, umkhako can be found in gardens, termite hills, mountains, rivers, pretty much. If alostro is within your area, there's probably umkhako nearby. People eat umkhako either because of its crunchy sound or even because of its earthy taste. Like, it's kind of like how people, when they describe wine, for instance, like, this is from the northern region of France, by the best winemakers in the world. Oui. Like, how do you describe the taste of rocks? Like, this is premium Steiner from the from the northern regions of the back room. Better yet, if you want to be a mine worker for your daily fix of umkhako, the clay can be found on virtually every street corner, taxi rank, or spaza for as little as 4 rand. And if you're at Johannesburg, you can even buy yourself a bag of umkhako on Take-A-Lot. I'm telling you, it's a real thing, this thing. On Take-A-Lot, umkhako is described as being roasted brown premium clay with no impurities or additives. That's like the most Woolworths way of this advertising rocks. Like, I imagine, what would Dan's Take-A-Lot description be like? Like Cape Town premium propaganda puppet with luxurious hobo beanies.
That's fair.
It's fair.
I think that's spot on.
I'm telling you. You might be wondering, of all the weird things women have eaten unprovoked, like muesli, why are South African women actually eating dirt? Well, umkhako shares an audience with Days of Our Lives, as it is primarily consumed by pregnant women who eat umkhako in order to fulfill their cravings or as a result of iron deficiencies. According to one study, umkhako is even said to help lighten one's skin. Kanyumbao might be a fan. Despite the positive impact it has on the economic frontal fighters, umkhako possesses a severe risk to pregnant women. Already, women lose a heck of a lot of blood during labor, and when you couple that with a clay addiction, women are sadly being set up for a life-threatening pregnancy, which will require blood transfusions. Moreover, due to the lack of nutrients in umkhako, because, I don't know, you're eating rocks, it has the potential to stunt the growth of a baby during pregnancy. It's bad enough that we're being finished by polony, and now we're being finished by rocks, you know? Jokes aside, it should alarm us all how easily accessible umkhako is and how potentially dangerous it is to pregnant mothers. So, I usually don't have to explain stuff like this, but you know that eating rocks is unregulated, right? Like, medical professions are even telling patients who eat clay rocks to prepare for their funerals. That's a warning you tell KZN criminals whenever you're fighting against General Mkhwana's. More education needs to be put out on the dangers of eating clay, because although you are eating dust, it should not end in dust to dust, ashes to ashes. Mashed not potatoes, ENCA.
Mashed not potatoes, everybody! Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to Kanye Mbao's email. We're going to take a quick break. Coming up in a second, we welcome the hosts of the Know-It-Alls podcast, culture critics Ayanda Charlie and Fezukhutle Mtonti, to speak about maybe the most famous or infamous celebrity entanglement in South Africa between Mihlali Ndamase and Leroy Sidambe. Their very public, often physical fights, and how we should engage with such high-profile people involved in such an abusive and destructive kind of relationship. That's next on The Dan Quarter Show. See you now. Thank you so much. Welcome back to the Dan Quarter Show. Monday nights 9 to 10 p.m. on ENCA, our first ever full hour show, which allows us to do so much more and have so many more conversations. And we need to have a really important conversation now. You're probably familiar with probably the most toxic and high-profile celebrity on-off, are they, aren't they relationship in modern times in South Africa between the independently extremely famous Mihlali Ndamase and Leroy Sidambe. And one part of their relationship, which makes it so different from other celebrity relationships, such that we would talk about it, is the fact that they consistently seem to both emotionally and physically abuse each other and perform that abuse through Instagram stories, pictures of bruises with tagging the other with love you and heart, and, you know, public official media statements, press releases. And so I think it's really important in a country where gender-based violence is such a serious disaster, and South Africa is one of the worst places in the world to be a woman, to talk about how I can't even think of many or any major celebrity relationships in other countries which are so publicly performed. The abuse is so publicly performed. And so it's a really important conversation that we're going to talk about now. And for that, we welcome back friends of the show, two people who I absolutely adore. They have a podcast called The Know-It-Alls, which I believe is the only podcast where you can hear the latest goss from the ultimatum straight into Frantz Fanon. And that's why I love them. Fezukhutle Mtonti and Ayanda Charlie are here. Thank you so much, guys.
Good to be back.
Genuinely adore your podcast. Now, this is a really, really heavy topic. Fezi, I want to start with you because I would like to get your initial thoughts on it's a long-running relationship.
Yeah.
And in the last few weeks, in particular, Mihlali posted those Instagram stories, Leroy responded, and it's just so awful the way that it's publicly performed. What are your initial reactions to this story?
The kind of public shame doesn't necessarily stick on Leroy in the same way that it's been sticking on women. And we know that because that is a function of misogyny and patriarchy. But I think there are multiple ways that we need to kind of think about this. I have some thoughts that I want to have about what beauty is and how we think about beauty and our suspicions around beauty. So, of course, we know the ideas around pretty privilege. We typically think that pretty privilege can afford us. In fact, studies have shown that people that are considered more desirable are kind of understood as more competent, as more, thoughtful, and we give them all of our money.
Then they get the jobs.
Yes, they get the jobs.
TikTok
on
sponsors.
Grey's Anatomy, the only thing that makes everyone competent is how beautiful they are. It's just like a bizarre thing that we've kind of done. But it's interesting because Mihlali is an objectively beautiful woman, right? We all know that to be true. But she's also a really smart woman in that she's leveraged her beauty to make a business.
She's a phenomenal business person.
A very good business person. And part of the success of her business is the fact that she's in fact incredibly hyper visible, right? And this is interesting because women that are also deeply hyper visible, their pain and their struggles are invisibilized in various ways and very serious ways politically.
They're invisibilized even as they're hyper visible.
Yes.
Say more about
Yes.
that.
So
Okay.
Mihlali, for example, has she has 400,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah.
She has 2.3 million Instagram followers. Okay. So this is woman who's in our faces all the time. But because of that, and because of our kind of parasocial relationships with these people, where we've created relationships with people that we don't know. And so because of
Yes.
that, we make judgments about people that we don't know.
Right.
And we are available to shame them, or we are available to put them at a particular moral standard, or whatever thing that we have.
Right.
We have to realize that's a voyeuristic relationship, and it's not
Totally.
in fact real. And so what often happens is that these people are losing their humanity with their proximity to us every day on screen, every day.
They're enslaved to us.
Yes,
Yeah.
right? And so we don't necessarily see them as people, as legitimate human beings who are worthy of empathy and compassion.
So when Mihlali then suffers, we don't treat it as real
Yes.
suffering of a human being.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
And we have a
Okay.
lot of different things that we then use to make sure that we make that shame available. So we call her a baddie. We
Yes.
call her a slay queen, which, by the way, used to be really interesting ways in which women used to delineate themselves. They used to say they're self-assured, they're, popular, they're beautiful.
Independent women.
Independent woman, and then misogyny came in.
Yeah, sure.
Misogyny came in and said, in fact, no, what a slay queen is a gold digger, is an opportunistic person.
So Leroy is getting away scot-free for being a physical abuser in a country of gender-based violence, and Mihlali is being stained relentlessly
Yeah.
by all of this. And what are your initial thoughts on what Fezia said?
Oh, I mean, it's Feza Mtonti.
An icon and a superstar.
But yeah, no, but certainly her humanity has been invisibilized. And solely in part because she is famous, and so I fully agree with what Fezi is saying. But I think in terms of how it shows up in how we hear her story, you'd be surprised as a man to realize that that is quite a universal experience for women, right? Like your story is never quite heard, but as it's not being heard, it's also being picked apart. We saw that initially when Mihlali put out the image, right, of her battered face, not really saying anything about Leroy except for thank you, my love, right? Of course, ironically. And then what we get from Leroy back is a statement. The first fully worded, detailed statement of his version of events. And from that statement, what I observed was that the behavior and the discourse around what was happening or what had allegedly happened became defined by the terms that Leroy brought into the conversation. So Leroy makes the claim that Mihlali is the one who is toxic. He alludes to her potentially having a substance abuse problem. He claims that she brought a knife into the house, barricaded over his son, and went into his room to attempt to kill him, to which he responded with a plea. And then, this is my favorite line, he said, he defended himself, pushed her away, and she made contact with the wall.
Sure.
Right? That is,
Yo.
it sounds like I fell from the 5th floor, I slipped on a bar of soap.
Yeah.
It doesn't really come together.
It sounds like she was walking on the street
Yes.
and a bird flew into her.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's like
exactly.
all,
How does exactly
abstract.
as the audience, as the South Africans who are very much familiar with abuse, either firsthand or from media or from just our communities, what our reactions were very interesting to me because number one, no one scrutinized Leroy's statement quite to the degree that they scrutinized Mihlali's statement, right? Took it at face value and then immediately leapt to it's mutual. This is my treatise today. I do not believe in mutual abuse because abuse happens when there's a power imbalance. Now, Mihlali is someone who's admitted to dating older men from a young age, right? And so she's someone who would posture quite confidently towards a white man and being in a relationship, not a white man, sorry, I just happen to be looking at one, towards an older man.
Whole Sunday world. She's alive. Me and Mihlali, baby.
That would be great.
An older man.
Who's doing matchmaking? But she would be quite confidently in a relationship with an older man. And so, like we've seen in interviews she's done recently about the relationship, she presents as a strong, non-violable woman who is very familiar with this kind of man and relationship.
Too
And-
powerful to hurt.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? And also too loose to be a victim.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
In that conversation that I'm referring to in that interview, Mihlali is making a case for how, number one, she's not a mistress, why she's not a homebreaker. She's essentially defending this relationship. And so what has happened since then is that people have decided that Mihlali is due a comeuppance for not only being everything that we do not deem good women to be, but also being a homebreaker.
Yeah.
And so how she's being read is someone who cannot be violated. And on top of that, Leroy is being read as someone who cannot lie.
But also, and this is such a classic thing when women are blamed for wrecking homes, men are the helpless victims of womanhood. Men can't, like my poor man,
Yeah.
you took him and his privates into your bed away from his loving wife
Yes.
and his children. And so men are rendered the total victims,
Yes.
unable to make another choice until
Yeah.
men beat women
Yes.
and destroy their lives.
Yeah.
It's really like, Fezi, we're almost going to run out of time. I'd love last words from you and Ayanda. Guys, thank you so much.
Like you've said, these women are, or rather these men are these little victims and poor babies, but they're the ones that have created the patriarchal system in which we live in, right?
Yeah. Continue to benefit from
and
it.
Exactly. And so the power dynamic, the power shift, the power imbalance is squarely on the men within the society.
Totally.
But we then distrust the victims. We place an enormous burden on women and folks that are non-binary, that are queer, that are marginalized. And those are the people that we put distrust on, despite the fact that the kind of social engineering of the society in which we live has made it so that they are the most vulnerable.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ayanda, take us on.
Listen, my last words are only 8% of GBV cases that make it to trial actually end in conviction. And so there is no incentive for women to report abuse, never mind lie about abuse. Only 2% of accusations about abuse actually happen to be fraught and not make it to trial. But there is often more reason to believe than not believe.
Yeah.
Totally. I love this job because I just get to invite really smart people to tell me what they think, whether they like it or not. The Know-It-Alls podcast. Fezim Tonti and Ayanda Charlie, thank you so much for that absolutely crucial discussion. And coming up after the break in our final interview, I get to welcome one more person who I just want to listen to their thoughts and have her talk at me, because esteemed journalist Ferial Hafaji is in the building. She's going to be telling us about the latest mayoral dramas and messes and what is the fate of, I'm sorry, Cape Town, the most consequential South African city. This is the Dan Corder Show. See you in a second. Welcome back to the Dan Corder Show. For the first time, a full hour. We have loved it so far, 9 through until 10 p.m. on Mondays, exclusive to ENCA. Right, this final interview I'm really looking forward to. If you haven't noticed, and by that I mean you don't live in Johannesburg, Johannesburg is a mess. A lot of that is because coalitions, local government coalitions, keep falling apart. And so if you're not watching from Johannesburg tonight, you kind of need to watch this interview to know the dangers of coalitions, to make sure that it doesn't happen in your town or your city. Just so you know, and I mentioned this on the show last week, since 2019, Johannesburg has had more mayors than there have been winners of Love Island in the same period of time. That's a Dan Corder original fact, which I was quite proud to write. The last two mayors were puppet mayors put in place by the ANC and the EFF. These puppet mayors were from Al Jamar, and then they were both fired and sent back to Sesame Street. And we now have another mayor doing it for the second time. Dada Morero lasted 26 days the first time. He only just got a paycheck. And this time he's back as an ANC mayor again in a frankly bizarre coalition that does not look workable. It includes Action SA, which is the party that famously said that they wouldn't work with the ANC in 300 years. Well, Herman, here we are. And Dada Morero in the last week, in one of his first major interviews, said the most extraordinary thing. You know, politicians sell the dream, right? Dada Morero did not sell the dream. He said, don't expect me to get anything done in the next 2 years as mayor, because the problems are too big and the local government elections in 2026 are coming. Now, usually I would say, Dada, at least pretend, bro. Like, pretend you've got something going on, but maybe we can appreciate a politician being really honest for once. But I'm thrilled to welcome one final guest to today's show, who is someone who is one of the best people to speak to about coalitions, the state of Johannesburg, and the mayorship. So please welcome the wonderful and brilliant Ferial Haffajee to the Dan Corder Show.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much for being here. I've been reading your work for like so many years. It's a real wonderful moment to have you here. You wrote an excellent article a few days ago talking about how the ANC had basically now cooked its goose in Johannesburg for the 2026 local government elections. Can you take us through the key ideas that you had in that piece?
So, firstly, in the piece, I say that Dada Morero, our 6th mayor since 2021, huge. I think that he's a seasoned politician, and he's certainly going to be better than the 2 mayors we've had before him. But unfortunately, he's made a coalition that's so big it's going to be unwieldy. Because what I've learned in covering Johannesburg exhaustively for many years now is that small Anyana parties, they're made up of political entrepreneurs. And really their only purpose there, as far as I've learned, is to extract as much as possible and to give work to small constituencies. So their focus isn't really service, and they probably have their eyes on the 2026 election. So this beautiful city, unfortunately, I don't see how it's going to change with such a coalition. I think what you needed here is a bigger coalition of a couple of parties who could get you over, could get a government, a local government, over the 200 seats, the 100 seats that it needs in order to govern.
Sure. And why do you say that you think the ANC has cooked its own goose? Do you think it's just not going to do well for the next 2 years and it will suffer in the polls in 2026? Because Joburg's really interesting. Another thing that people who don't live in Johannesburg may not know is it's maybe the most competitive city in the country.
You know, the ANC in Gauteng, it got 34%. I mean, whenever I go to ANC press conference, I don't think they quite get that in Gauteng, that you got 34%. You didn't even get the 40% which the national government got. By choosing the kind of government it has, by putting out the messages it's got, the clear message I'm getting is that they think things are not so bad. Wow. And that's probably why Dada Morero said in the News 24 interview, I can't do a lot in 2 years. It's probably true, but you need to say, at least I'm going to try. Yeah. I'm not going to win that pothole crown again and again and again here. But I think that what's happening in Gauteng and in Joburg is that the renewal of the ANC, that is its imperative at national level, because they can see the writing on the wall. I sat at the election centre and I watched Gwede Mantashe, Nomvula Mokonyane, Nkenke Kekana, old seasoned comrades, really getting the message as they looked at that leaderboard. You could see them going, oh, we hear it. That hasn't sunk in Gauteng and Joburg. And I could take you through many reasons of why that hasn't been done. Extractive politics, patronage is what rules the roost here. You don't see that renewal wind blowing through. And so for me, if it continues in this vein, the ANC is looking to 20-something% come 2026. Wow. And what's going to happen for those of us who love Joburg, who live here, great city, lovely energy, increasingly it's going to be different. It's going to be your creatives, business people, WhatsApp groups of people running the city basically, who are going to keep it going and hopefully see it thriving.
Yeah, it's funny because Johannesburg, its people exist in spite of its politics.
Absolutely.
And like make this an amazing city to be in. Again, sorry, Cape Town, but I'm very happy where I am now. So, Ferial, like we have seen, I think a lot of people find corruption to be an abstract ill, but they don't see how this corruption scandal led to this department's dysfunction, led to this community losing its streetlights. It's like less directly personal than someone broke into your house and like took something from it. And so what I want to ask you is, what do you think are the major things that Johannesburg is failing at as a local government that need to be fixed? next? We know that the old CBD has got no security or like law enforcement meaningfully. We've seen all the building fires. We know that potholes are a crisis, that ironically in my area, whenever they come to fix the electricity, they somehow take out the water. So you get the electricity back, but then you lose the water for 2 days. What are the big things that whoever comes in 2026 need to fix immediately to get the city closer to back on its feet?
Sure. So it needs to fix the fascia of the city, that which holds it together. If you think of what's the skeleton that any city needs, and we know this so painfully, like you say, if you haven't got water, then you don't have electricity. I've just put in Jojo tanks. I don't know if you have. Many people putting in solar as well, because I count this stuff, and there are thousands of water cuts across Joburg every day. Same thing with electricity. So you have to get those two things working, our transport working, and then very importantly for the young women who are so key to making Joburg magical, make it safe, get the street lights working. I looked last week across the city, be it from Zola to Sandton, thousands of street lights out. And so for me, those are the three crucial things you want to do. Really lovely things happening in the inner city, I have to tell you. This Josie My Josie project beginning to work. Symbolic things, the Nelson Mandela Bridge has been relit, the Rissik Street fountains back up, the Barbicans been sold, and so Bridge Books is moving into there. I could tell you lots of these stories. Those kind of partnerships are beginning to tick. And for me, what makes me hopeful about our city is that citizens are becoming active and they're beginning to join those dots. So corruption isn't notional any longer. Why is our city library closed for 3 years? Why did it cost 60 million rand? A fire door can't cost 60 million rand. Absolutely not. We need to develop that literacy to understand where's our money going to and what's it going to take to make Josie everything it can be.
And finally, I want to ask you, what's happening right now? Because I always feel like, the election happens, we get new names, and then for 6 months, the news goes somewhere else. So I want to know, what you are looking at in your beat as, a top Johannesburg journalist on the Johannesburg beat. What is going on right now that we should be looking at in politics and business?
So in Joburg, I think there's this Josie My Josie project, which brings on board civil society, business, and the government, which is actually, they found the best people in the city to work with, and have got 12 things happening, cleaning up the on-ramps, off-ramps into the city, because when you enter a city or exit it, that's your impression of the city craft, what's it like. So that's very good. On the other hand, you've got the Joburg Crisis Alliance, which is the activist ones, and they were the ones who pushed very hard for Kabelo Gwamanda to step down, Gwamza as the people call him, to step down. And so that's why we have Dada Morero, who at least has a greater mandate to govern. For me now, it really is a moment that requires heightened civic activism rather than lesser, in order that we may begin to put right those key things. And I do think you need the energy of a Jordan Hill Lewis, a young mayor, as you have in Cape Town. And then it's technical stuff, which is a bit like your census story earlier. It's what percentage do we spend on capex versus operational expenses? What's going to happen in the Samoa wage round? These are crucial to help us see what's going to happen over the next 2 years. And then an election tends to focus the minds of politicians. So we have to keep pointing out to them that in 2 years' time, you'll be gone if you don't do your work.
I love threatening a politician. No, okay. I love saying things that make a politician realize they must work. DA, do not email me again. Okay, so Ferial Haffajee, thank you so much. One final question,
Yes,
if I can be
of course.
very cheeky. So we've all witnessed the mess of the outsiders, the left behinds, the leftovers of the GNU, which is essentially can boil down to a bunch of tiny parties and then the EFF and the MK party
Yes.
kind of eating each other. But they both did fairly well, or at least serviceably well, in the recent national election in Johannesburg and in Gauteng. Now, you've already said that you reckon the ANC on its current bent will continue to lose support. What other parties do you think we should be watching for their rise or fall in the next 2 years in Johannesburg?
I think we're going to see something new formed, like a new centre. Parties will get together coherently. I have to say the EFF in Joburg is impressive. They work incredibly hard. They do their work quite well. Action SA has a very good caucus. And then the DA councillors of the caucus who just do that grind work of getting your water back on, dealing with city power, knowing how to get the new mayor out to Republic Road where a pipe burst happened 20 times. I think you're going to see the formation of something different, maybe even in a couple of years' time.
Man, the Joburg Whisperer, Farrell Haffajee, thank you so much for being here. And that is our show, the first ever full 1 hour Monday night, 9 to 10 p.m. Dan Quarter show. If you missed any of it or just want to watch it again to see me mess up a line or an interviewee rock out, remember full episodes are posted for free on enca.com, and we'll be back next Monday night because South Africa is a movie and this is The Watch Party. Have a great week.